Varel 9 wasn't the kind of place anyone dreamed of being assigned to. A barren hunk of frozen rock, it hung lopsided in the orbit of a dead blue star, its surface scratched by needle-sharp winds and cosmic radiation. Officially, it was a joint research station, an experiment in interspecies cooperation and scientific exchange. Unofficially, it was where bureaucrats sent people they didn't want to deal with anymore. The human named Ronan had arrived 2 months ago with a duffel bag, a sarcastic grin, and a talent for finding every piece of machinery that hummed the wrong way. He fixed things that weren't broken just to have something to do. Half the crew found him charming, the other half were waiting for someone to float him out an airlock. But what caught Ronan's attention most wasn't the view of the cracked horizon or the synthetically miserable food rations. It was her. Lysera. She wasn't stationed with the others. She lived in the northern wing, near the energy labs, alone as if the base itself had made a decision to push her into a corner. Most avoided her. Some were afraid. A few claimed they didn't even know she was still here. Ronan had asked about her once and got only shrugs and a quickly changed subject. So naturally, he sought her out immediately. Their first conversation had been awkward, mostly because she didn't speak, just stared at him with those dark, unblinking eyes while he rambled about an air filtration unit leaking like it had allergies. Her ears, long, elegantly arched, twitching slightly every time he made a joke. "You know," he said, leaning against the wall of her lab, "you don't have to look at me like I'm some kind of fungal growth." She didn't answer. "I mean, you can if you want. I've been called worse. Once got nicknamed mildew during basic training. Still nothing." He pointed at her diagnostic table. "Is that a molecular stabilizer?" "Nice. I tried to fix one once. Ended up creating an unstable bubble that aged a muffin 60 years in 3 seconds. That made her blink. Progress. Now, weeks later, their conversations weren't quite conversations, but they existed. He spoke. She replied, usually in clipped words, mostly to correct him. And then one day when he made a particularly bad pun about ion storms being moody teens, she smirked. Barely. But it was there. That was the day he started eating his lunch outside her lab every shift. The others thought he was crazy. "Why are you bothering with her?" asked Dr. Bintari, a reptilian xenopsychologist with a temper shorter than her claws. "She reminds me of my ex," Ronan said, "except this one hasn't tried to set my clothes on fire yet. That I know of." He liked being around Lysera, not just because she was interesting, though she was, in that mysterious, possibly could kill you with a glance sort of way, but because she didn't pretend. Everyone else on the base performed politeness like a protocol. Lysera didn't bother. When she liked something, she said nothing. When she disliked something, she still said nothing. But her ears folded back slightly like a warning sign. And then there was her energy, literally. She hummed. At first he thought it was the lab's equipment, but it wasn't. Sometimes when she was focused, the air around her felt charged, like just before a lightning strike. Tools would flicker. Lights would dim. Once his communicator burst into static just standing near her. She never explained it. He didn't ask. But he noticed that on the days he made her laugh, even just once, the hum softened. He started bringing her snacks. Human snacks. She stared at each with the intense suspicion of someone who had once bitten into something that bit back. He finally found one she liked. Caramelized starch puffs. He pretended he didn't notice when she hoarded them. Today the storm outside was hitting its peak. Static discharge rippled across the dome windows, painting spiderwebs of light across the hallway. Ronan was carrying a thermos and 2 mugs when he entered the lab. "You drink tea?" he asked. "No." "Great. More for me. I brought you a cup anyway. It's peppermint. I read somewhere it calms nerves, or makes you burp. One of the two." She didn't look up from her console. He set the mugs down and leaned casually on the counter. "So, important scientific question. You got a name for the energy thing you do, or should I just keep calling it the zap in my head?" Lysera slowly turned toward him. "You have no clearance to know anything about me." He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't say I wanted clearance. Just a nickname. The zap makes you sound cool." Her ears twitched again. That tiny smirk. It was addictive. "You're not afraid of me," she said. "Should I be?" Her gaze deepened. "Others are. Even my own kind." He shrugged. "Well, I'm not most people. I fixed a processor once using bubble gum and an old sock. Fear isn't really my default setting." "Why?" He blinked. "Why what?" Why aren't you afraid of me?" He didn't answer at first. The hum in the room seemed to draw closer, wrapping around them. Finally, he looked at her, not joking, not deflecting, and said, "Because I've been the person everyone walked away from too. I know what that looks like. I just never expected to see it in someone like you." Silence. The energy pulsed softly. The lights didn't flicker. She stared at him, unreadable. Then her eyes narrowed. "You are either foolish," she said, "or incredibly lonely." He lifted his cup in a mock toast. "Why not both?" For the first time, her laugh wasn't small. It rang, short and sharp, like a sound she hadn't made in years. Ronan felt it like a victory, not for himself, for her. "I've got more snacks in my locker," he said. "If you're ever in the mood to gamble with your digestive system." She rolled her eyes. "You talk too much. And yet, you haven't vaporized me. That's got to count for something." She shook her head, but the hum in the air stayed warm, steady. He didn't leave. She didn't ask him to. Outside, the storm raged. Inside the lab, for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel so heavy. Lysra stood by the viewport, arms crossed behind her back, watching the aurora storms twist across the skies of Varel 9. She was calm, visibly, but Ronan could feel it. The faint hum again. Not dangerous this time, just electric. Like she was a live wire waiting for someone to either understand her or regret trying. He slid into the lab with a thermal blanket slung over one shoulder and a tray balanced in his hands. "I come bearing gifts of warmth and overly salted potato discs. Also, I may or may not have stolen this blanket from the infirmary. So if anyone asks, we both tripped and fell on it simultaneously in a display of interspecies diplomacy." She turned slightly, one pointed ear twitching. "What are salted potato discs?" "Human joy in circular form. I have no need for nutrition at this moment." "Perfect. More for me." He dropped the blanket onto a bench and plopped down cross-legged on the floor, crunching into the snack with loud theatrical enjoyment. Ah, the taste of home and impending heart disease. Lysra gave him a long look. "You are very noisy. And you are alarmingly quiet. Between us, we make an average person. That's teamwork." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked back to her console, fingers dancing over the controls with inhuman speed. Data shimmered across the screens in vertical waves of light, displaying particle behavior, energy fluctuations, and what Ronan could only assume were some equations capable of bending space-time if you sneezed at the wrong moment. "I've been reviewing stellar degradation patterns in Sector Iota 12, she said without turning. "There's a pulsar cluster behaving erratically. Emissions suggest artificial interference." "Artificial as in sabotage?" "Artificial as in intelligent activity. Possibly a signal." A pattern. Ronan tilted his head. "You saying someone out there is blinking stars at us like Morse code?" "Perhaps. If so, their grasp of physics is imaginative." "Well, so is mine. I once tried to fix a food replicator with duct tape and peanut butter. It worked. For 5 seconds. Then we had flaming yogurt." A pause. "I've read your file," she said, turning now. "You were demoted for inappropriate use of military-grade components in personal cooking experiments. Technically, I created the first high-velocity pancake launcher." "You're insane. I prefer creatively unstable." She gave him one of her subtle expressions, a ghost of amusement barely visible unless you were looking for it. He always was. "I'm serious about the signal," she said, tone dipping. "We may be standing on the edge of something vast, and we're the only ones listening." "Well, lucky the universe got us instead of someone boring." She studied him a moment longer, then gestured toward the console. "Do you wish to assist?" "Only if I get to press one button dramatically and then say something like, 'We're not alone.'" "You may press 2 buttons." He grinned and rolled up beside her, scanning the streams of alien data. It looked like gibberish, but there was a rhythm to it, a tempo, almost musical. He pointed. "Right there. That looks like repetition. Could be code. Could be a really bored space whale tapping on the walls of reality." Lysra nodded, zooming in. The signal pattern looped once, then again, before fracturing into silence. "I've seen something like this before," she said. "Not here. Not recently. Long ago, when I was still training on my homeworld." He glanced at her. "You don't talk much about your home. Nobody here really knows anything about you." "Good. Right. Mysterious. Gotta keep that Space Queen reputation sharp." Her eyes narrowed. Why do you always make jokes? Because if I don't, I'll remember that I'm 30 million kilometers from anything resembling home, with a broken heater, a space toilet that screams when it flushes, and a crush on someone who could probably fry my nervous system with a frown. Silence. The hum in the room pulsed once, just once, softly. You flatter yourself, she said, but there was no venom in it. Ronan leaned back, hands behind his head. That's fair, but don't pretend you don't like the snacks. I saw you take the entire bag of marshmallow moons yesterday. They are inefficient as food sources, but delicious. She gave the slightest nod. A concession. He'd take it. Later that night, after he'd left the lab, Lysera stood alone again at the viewport. The data looped silently beside her, echoing in its untranslatable rhythm. She placed one hand on the glass, feeling the vibration of the windstorms beyond the dome. She had once silenced entire rooms by walking in, had once stood before tribunals, councils, and even enemies with the full weight of her lineage behind her. But none of them had ever sat on her lab floor and shared salted discs and talked about flaming yogurt like it was the most important story in the galaxy. None of them had ever asked her why she was alone. He did, and that question lingered in her mind like the signal, repeating, echoing, growing louder with each passing loop. The transmission stopped, just like that. After 12 cycles of repeating pulses, shifting harmonic tones, and waveforms that even Lysera couldn't fully decipher, it ended mid-loop, leaving behind only silence and static. The lab lights flickered once, not from power loss, but as if the station itself sighed in disappointment. Ronan stared at the blank screen. Well, that's anticlimactic. It could mean several things, Lysera murmured, fingers dancing over the interface. They may have completed their message, or realized they were being observed. Or, she hesitated. They were destroyed. That took a dark turn fast. He squinted at her. You always jump to extinction-level theories, or is today special? My people are trained to anticipate loss. Mine are trained to make toast and avoid emotional intimacy, so we're even. She didn't smile, but the pause between her sentences had changed. Not mechanical anymore. Now it carried the weight of thought, of choice. We can't trace it further, she said. Whatever sent that message, it's gone now. Ronan slumped into the nearest chair, spinning once before his boot caught a corner and sent him lurching sideways. I vote we claim it was space dolphins trying to teach us interpretive math. No one can disprove that. She turned from the console. You're not what I expected from a military science liaison. That's because I'm not very good at it, he said, brushing imaginary dust off his shoulder. They needed someone expendable, charming, and utterly disposable. I aced all three. You are far from disposable, he blinked, then blinked again. That's either the nicest thing anyone said to me this year, or a sign you've finally decided I'm worth dissecting alive. Her eyes dropped for a second. Not shame, just thoughtfulness. Then gently, you've changed the energy of this place. I never meant for that to happen. He grinned. I'll take that as an apology for stealing my marshmallow moons. I regret nothing. Their gazes held, and something shifted again, but this time not with silence. A different hum, low and warm, buzzed between them, just under the edge of sound. So what happens now? Ronan asked. I don't know. She walked past him toward the central core, where the pulse sensors had been tied into the outer antenna array. He followed because that's what he did now. He followed her, not because of orders or duty or survival, but because she looked at him like he wasn't broken, and he looked at her like she was already more human than most people he'd known. We could submit a report, he said, blame space weather, claim temporary insanity, maybe sneak in a line about psychic whales. No, she said, we keep listening. He raised an eyebrow. Even if nothing ever answers? Especially then. Silence lingered again, but now it felt like a shared blanket rather than a barrier. The station buzzed softly, and above them, the stars crawled past the observation dome, distant and unknowable. Lysera lifted her hand, placing it against the dome glass. This time she didn't look away when she spoke. When I asked you why you didn't avoid me like the others, she started. He straightened. Yeah? I expected you to say something foolish. Oh, I absolutely had something foolish prepared. Something about your majestic bone structure and the possibility of being vaporized if I sneezed wrong. But you didn't. He shifted. Yeah. Well, you seemed like someone who needed to hear the truth. And now? Now? He scratched the back of his neck. Now I'm thinking maybe you weren't the only one who needed that. She stepped closer. Not all the way, but enough that he could see the faint shimmer in her irises again. Not power this time. Emotion. Deep, old, careful. You've become important to me, she said. He swallowed. Same here. I mean, maybe not quite the same. You're obviously the alien royalty type, and I'm more guy who gets electrocuted by door panels. But yeah, important. Her hand twitched slightly. Then she reached up and pressed two fingers gently to his chest. I'm not who I was when I came here. He covered her hand with his. None of us are. Outside, the aurora began again, dancing violet and silver across the upper atmosphere. Somewhere in the distance, a satellite pinged to life and drifted aimlessly. Later that night, Ronan sat at the same viewport where Lysra had once stood alone, eating the last of the salted potato discs while writing a transmission log with the subject line, "Not entirely a waste of funding." He paused, then under that added, "Found something. Not just a signal, something else. Someone." He thought for a moment, then typed the last line. "She doesn't walk alone anymore." Behind him, Lysra entered the room quietly, barefoot, her long ears flicking slightly at the buzz of the internal systems. He turned. She pointed at the bag in his hand. "Those better not be the last discs."